AutoCAD 2013, we're going to look at the basics of how to get started in creating a drawing. And to start off with that, we're going to talk a little bit about the screen environment. The big letter A is got the management and utilities items that you may need. We'll be working here under the units command and so forth in just a couple of minutes, but the big letter A is definitely a valuable spot. Across the top, we've got our basic undo redos, printing, quick saves. We can also set up our AutoCAD environment for something other than drafting and annotation, meaning 3D modeling. Or you can go back to the old school AutoCAD Classic, but we'll keep with the new wave of drafting and annotation. Along with that, we're going to have ribbon menus, and our base menu is the home. We'll also have, when we get on later in the class, we'll be on insert. Annotate is dimensioning. Layouts is important when you're creating page and sheets. Parametric is a new tool built inside AutoCAD to make it semi-parametric, or you can make your drawings semi-parametric based on the structure that you put in, so they no longer would be static. Meaning, if you change a dimensional value, it'll update the size of the line, being parametric. The view tools, we're going to be here a little bit later. Management, basically the big thing that you need to deal with on management is the user interface. The user interface deals with how to build your own menus. You also have the ability to build your own tool palettes. So you've got some really interesting capabilities in how you can customize your ribbons and any pop-up tool palettes. Output, basically plotting and previews. Plugins, online, the Autodesk Vault tools to allow you to save and control access to data files. And then Express Tools has been around for quite a while, and they've got a lot of great little features and tools like arc-align text, break symbols for large-scale drawings, import styling, annotation attachments. There's a lot of little tweaks built into the Express Tools. So I'm going to move back to the home ribbon. And now the sheet on your screen is basically showing you that we're looking at the X and the Y if you look in the lower corner. And so I'm going to zoom out by using my wheel mouse and just roll my wheel mouse in and out, and I can zoom in and out of my screen. But we also have a grid going on. Along with the grid, up in the top corner, we've got a view cube, and this will help us when we get to a three-dimensional style drawing, but it also gives you the orientation that we're looking from the top down on our drawing environment. And then we've got some viewing tools here. Pan. We can also do the pan if we press the wheel on our mouse. We can basically grab and shake the environment. If you have your mouse set up properly, instead of doing an input, it will accomplish that. Let me go ahead and reset my mouse here. If you press and hold, the pan will move the screen around and not give you the mouse input. And on the bottom, they've changed just a little bit. This is the command prompt line now. It used to be built in as part of the base of the bottom of the structure. It's now a floating menu. We also have tabs on the bottom for layouts and model. Don't worry too much about that initially. In the lower corner, we've got X, Y, and Z orientation, coordinate systems. We have a lot of helper buttons across the bottom. They've added a couple of more here in 2013. We're going to be using some of these for our setup here in just a couple of minutes. And then over in the right-hand corner deals with some of the scaling aspects for annotations and locking positions and so forth. So again, set up in custom control. When you right mouse click anywhere on the screen, you're going to get a pop-up menu. Doesn't matter where you're at, each spot that you're at will give you a new pop-up. We're going to go ahead and choose the options. We'll just right mouse click on the main screen, we'll choose options. Under options, this is where we can set up and control the way things look on our screen. And color scheme currently is dark. Okay, we can control our printable area, the resolution that we're working with. Under drafting, we can have auto snap settings, which allow you to snap to specific locations. Under the select, under the selection tab, you can change your pick box and grip sizes. Again, just wanted to show you that it's here, that you've got a lot of customization capability. I did not change or make any modifications. Down here at the bottom, we've got a button which turns on our grid. And so down at the grid display, which is also the F7 function key, we'll turn your grid on and off. Makes it a little bit easier for you to see my screen as we get rolling on the customization. And we've got 4 basic steps that we're going to customize with. There's a total of 6, but today we're going to focus on 4. The first one being the units command, then polar, then object snap, then layers. Once we work through those 4 settings, we'll then go ahead and draw a basic rectangle, and we'll wrap up today's video. So the first step we have to do is set up the units. And so with the units command, we find that actually under the big letter A, under drawing utilities, and we look for units. Now this discussion is going to take a little while, because we're going to talk about all the details with each of these options, because not everybody's drawing the same type of drawings. AutoCAD being as flexible as possible as a drawing tool, we need to be able to customize exactly what we're working with. And in this case, we're working with decimal units. That's our default. But we can also have architectural units, which are in feet and inches. We can have engineering units, which are feet and decimal inches. Sorry, not decimal feet, but decimal inches. We also have fraction and scientific. Scientific is scientific notation to the power of 10. And then fractional is similar to architectural, but just fractional inches. I'm going to continue to work with basic decimal, but our second thing that we can control is the precision. So I can set to 2 decimal places my decimal precision, but what happens when I go to architectural? In architectural, I can set my precision at the level that I need. So if I'm doing basic framing drawings, I might work to a 1/2 inch or a 1/4 inch. If I'm doing detailed cabinet drawings, I'm going to work to a 1/16 or a 32nd. Very rarely are you going to get beyond a 32nd, because the cost will go up. The higher the level of precision, the higher the cost of the product. Ultimately, decimal, 2 decimal places. Angle, same scenario. We can work in degrees, minutes, seconds. Many of the old architectural drawings are drawn with degrees, minutes, seconds. You can replicate those in CAD. From trigonometry, our friends the gradients and radians. Again, different portions of a circle. And lastly, surveyor's units, which is perfect for doing survey or plot plan drawings, giving you both a bearing and degrees, minutes, seconds location. We're going to set it back to decimal, degrees, and whole units. So they're going to be in whole degree units. Now there's a button here for clockwise and counterclockwise, because not everybody draws the same way. Math and science-based, or mechanical drafting and architecture, they're all counterclockwise as the default location of angular measurement. But if you go to maps, maps are clockwise rotation as the basis of angular measurement. So we have to have the ability to switch it from counterclockwise, which is the default, to clockwise. Insertion scale. This is important when we start working with drawings that we move from one drawing to another, or copy drawings between themselves. Because when you're bringing a millimeters drawing into an inch environment, you want it to scale properly. Even though it might say 30 millimeters, you don't want that to mean 30 inches in the new drawing. So you actually need to have it convert, and that's what the insertion scale allows you to do. It allows you to set the base drawing scale, and then that will help if you bring in one drawing and set it inside another. Lighting. Not going to work too much with lighting because we're not going to be dealing with any rendering in the class, but just to go to say that there is lighting settings when you do go and create a three-dimensional or two-dimensional render of an object. You also notice that there's a direction button, and we can control our direction. Right now, east is 0, which is, when you look on the magic compass, 0, 90, 180, 270. East on the right hand side being 0 is mathematical based. We can also have 0 as north, which would be map based, right? North being 0 degrees for maps, flying, boating. But in drawing and mechanical and architectural styles, 0 is to the east location. Again, no changes. We change the decimal place to 2 decimal places. Our second setup item is actually on the lower bar, and it's called polar. Now, the polar setting is the button that we locate on the lower bar. It'll come up and say polar tracking. It's an F10 function key. I'm going to right mouse click on it and choose settings. When you right mouse click on any of the lower buttons, it'll pop up automatically with the list of the most common options that you may want to select. However, this time I want to actually go into the settings to show you all the details about the polar tracking. And so polar tracking deals with increment angles. And the concept behind increment angles is it allows me to draw at the predetermined angle. And so I can set it at, in this case it's set at 5, which means every 5 degrees I'm going to be able to draw a line accurately. So from 0 to 5 to 10 to 15 to 20, and I could draw an accurate line on each one. I can set the increment angle for any angle size, but 2 degrees isn't listed. What I could do is just swipe and type. I can make my increment angle whatever angle I swipe and type in. I typically leave mine at 5 degrees, but if I know that I've got specific angles that I need to deal with in my drawing, I'll add them as additional angles. So I'll click on the additional angles, click New, and at that point I'll type in 23 degrees. And so it will automatically lock in at 20, 23, and 25 degrees. Now it's going to track based on horizontal and vertical, which is what orthogonally based tracking is used for, as opposed to all polar angle settings. This is a little bit more structured for what we're doing, and it's going to be absolute based, meaning it's always going to be based from 0 degrees. If you choose relative to last segment, that works really well if you've got a lot of angular measurements between lines. So if you've got a very unique structure and there's a lot of interior angles on the inside of that shape, then you could use relative to last segment. Also in our drafting settings area is our third option, which is object snaps. Object snaps allow us to snap to specific locations. And so right now it's got it automatically set up for endpoints, midpoints, and centers, intersection and extension, and perpendicular. Many times midpoint and perpendicular are not selected, and you need to turn those two on. Now you might be thinking, well, why did he pick center instead of tangent? And each one of these has got a unique property. The center and tangent both require to select the outer edge of the circular object, whether it's an arc or a circle. Well, since you use centers more than you use tangents typically, I've made center my base object snap. I can also pop up and select tangent to override my base object snap settings, which is the way that I typically do it. Let's explain some of the other ones that you may not be very familiar with. Nodes are points. So if you want to snap to a point, if you've imported data points, that would be nodes. Quadrants. 0, 90, 180, and 270 are the 4 quadrant locations on a circle. And you can snap to any one of those 4 locations. Insertion. When we bring or put text into a drawing or bring a block into a drawing, we have an insertion point, and that's what the object snap is setting up. Perpendicular. It's got to be perpendicular 90 degrees to the object. Tangent. When a circular object is tangent to either another circular object or a linear object, meaning it touches only at one location, which is perpendicular from the center to that intersection point, the tangent tool is used to locate that. Nearest. Nearest allows you to select on an object nearest to your cursor. Doesn't guarantee that it's going to be at an end point or a midpoint, but it does guarantee that it will pick on that object nearest to your cursor. Apparent intersection. If 2 entities cross somewhere in space, we can find it with apparent intersection and start a line from there. So the apparent intersection is to find the location where 2 entities may cross. Parallel. Parallel allows us to draw lines parallel to the basic object. However, there's a much better tool called offset to create parallel objects inside AutoCAD. So that's object snap and polar tracking. Let's do a quick demo of both before we get into layers. I'm going to select the line command. I'm going to draw a line. Right mouse click and say cancel any new lines. I'm going to pick a new line here. And this time you can see that I can highlight the green end. That's an end point. I can find the triangle. That's a midpoint. Where's perpendicular? There's perpendicular, 90 degrees to that line segment. And so I can use the object snaps to guarantee positional locations. That's the advantage of using object snaps. Let's go ahead and undo. Pick the object, right mouse click and delete or erase. And our last setting that we're going to work on is layers. Layers are a little bit tricky, but they're really important to use. When we create layers, what we're doing is creating areas for our objects to be categorized in. Right now there's one layer called layer 0. Everybody has layer 0. That's what the drawing starts with. If I'd like to create a new layer, I can just hit the new layer button. It's going to create layer 1, layer 2, layer 3. And so what I'll do is I'll type in the names of the object or of the layers that we're going to use. The first one here being object. And even though I highlighted layer 2, I can double click in the field and we'll make this one center. And I'll double click in the field and make this one dimension. Whoops, didn't take. There we go. And you'll notice that I have to click inside the text area. I've typed in a new name, and right now the check mark, I can move that check mark, which is the current layer, to any one of the other layer locations. So I've got 3 layers. I'm going to grab the box, expand it out a little bit for us to see. Along with expanding it, we're going to talk a little bit about each of these different options here. With layers, we can turn layers on and off, which means we can set their visibility. If I were to turn a layer off, the light bulb goes off. That means that layer can't be visible on my screen, which also means it will not plot. So using on and off is a great tool to show multiple versions. Layer 1 can have one version, layer 2 can have two versions based on the same object. So if you're doing a renovation and you want to show option A and option B, use layers. You can use the on and off. Now the freeze is very similar to the on and off. Freeze was developed early in AutoCAD, meaning 1985, inside AutoCAD. And the concept is that the computers back in 1985 were not nearly as powerful as your cell phone. Yeah, that's kind of scary. But the point is, when we created very difficult drawings, we had to freeze layers so they wouldn't calculate. And so when you freeze something, it no longer calculates the data associated with it. Little snowflake will appear if you freeze the layer. It's automatically turned off, meaning even though it might be saying that it's on, when you freeze it, it's automatically not visible when it's frozen. And that ultimately saves computing power because you're telling it not to compute that data. And so that's how we utilized freeze and then the subsequent thaw when we were creating drawings. The third one is lock and unlock. Now lock and unlock is excellent. Let's say, for example, I'm doing a two-story house. I've got the first floor done. I now need to draw the second story, but I don't want to move any of the walls on the first story because I need to locate them for bearing or weight support for the second story. So to accomplish the ability to do weight support, I can lock the first floor, draw on the second floor. I can use the first floor's data without any fear that I would delete it. That is a big advantage. Colors are important. You're going to see me choose a variety of different colors. I will typically choose certain colors for certain layers just by habit. Now, is it critical that you choose the same colors? No. Be careful though with colors, because the color of yellow and the color of cyan print out light gray, and so they're not very dark for plotting. Line types. Right now we've got continuous line types on all of our lines, but I've got a center line layer. So the center line layer, I need to change my line type from continuous to center. So right now Phantom is loaded, but I'm going to need to load Center 2. Now you'll notice that Center, Center 2, and Center X2 are three line types that can be loaded. And so what's the difference? Well, Center's the base. Center 2 is half the scale, meaning there's twice as many dashes. And Center X2 is 2 times or half fewer dashes for the center line. So it gets confusing with half and 2x, but realistically 2x means that there's fewer dashes and half scale means that there's more dashes in the drawing. What happens if you create something really large or really small? Well, then you're going to have to set a line type scale command, and we'll go with that a little bit later in our drawing setup processes in future videos. So I'm going to choose Center 2. But I need to pick it again because I just loaded it. I didn't actually select it for the layer, so I have to pick it a second time and choose OK. Line weights. Now the default line weight is 0.25 millimeters. Why millimeters? Because lead pencils are sized in millimeters. If you've got a mechanical pencil, you'll notice that it's half scale, half millimeter, 0.7 millimeter, or 0.9 millimeter? Well, I can make my object line a half a millimeter. So I just did layer 0 as a half a millimeter. Let's go to object line. We'll make that a half a millimeter also. Plotting, be very careful with the options out here. If I inadvertently click something, I've got the circle and slash next to plotting, which means that layer does not plot. I actually have had students during tests try to plot, and they don't get anything on their drawing. And it's because they inadvertently hit the do not plot option. So don't overstress yourself. The options here towards the end not used significantly for what we're working with. Here's the big thing. Notice that there are no buttons to save. You just hit the X. And we're going to begin with center lines. And we'll work from there. So those are the 4 setup steps. Let's show you how to draw a quick line. I picked the line command, and from math we learned that it takes 2 points to draw a line. So if I left mouse click a point, move it over, notice that it tells me the size of the line, the angle that I'm working in, all the basic details. What if I typed in a distance of 3? Or in this case it's really far, so let's go ahead and type in a distance of 8. I can literally type in a distance of 8, hit the enter key. You'll notice that I've got center lines and they're green. Not the best color for a white background. Okay. But you can see that all I have to do is point in the direction that I would like to go, type a distance. That one's 5. Let's back out so you can see the full length of the line. And I can connect to the endpoint, right mouse click and choose enter, and I've got a green triangle. But what if I don't like the color green? I can go back to the layer properties button, which is up here on the top, change green and say, boy, that green, it's just too busy. It's not dark enough. So I'm going to pick a darker green and choose OK. That's going to update all the entities on the drawing that are on that layer. So it's automatic. That's the nice thing about layers, and that's why you want to categorize using layers, so that way you can keep all your objects in one area that are similar. Have a great day, and we'll look forward to talking to you soon.